we are. International Society of Air Safety Investigators. It's our folks that are putting this on. That is the Professional Society for Aircraft Accident Investigation. Heartily encourage you to join it. Okay, this starts into some of your information. What do you do when you first get to an airplane crash? You charge into the airplane and start investigating? No, you get out on the perimeter. Exactly right. So you read good. You get out on the perimeter. You get the broad picture. You do this initial site survey. And most of the time, it'll start answering questions. Personally, I'm a follower of the rule-out theory. When I investigate something, I'm ruling things out to narrow the focus of my investigation. That's the purpose of this. In the initial walk-around, I can rule stuff out, rule stuff in. Four corners of the airplane, nose, tail, two wingtips. Where they are in relation to each other and ground and the final flight path will tell me an awful lot about how the airplane hit the ground and what it did after it hit the ground. So you always got to find the four corners. Inventory. Do I have all the airplane here? If I'm missing a wing, where's it most likely to be? Somewhere behind it. Basic field investigation procedure. Walk the final flight path once you figure it out. Now there is one other slight possibility, particularly if it's a general aviation aircraft. What's the other possibility? Somebody took it. Now in case anybody's ever tempted, anybody know what the penalty for tampering with an NTSB investigation is? It's 1 year in jail. It's a federal felony. 1 year in jail, $10,000 fine per event. So don't do it.
And they take the wing, right?
If they take the wing.
No, did he leave the wing?
Say again?
No.
Anyway, so don't do it. If I don't have it and it came off in flight, do I start narrowing the focus as to what might have happened to the airplane?
Yes.
Is it overstress? Is it design? Some of the later stuff. Identify the major stuff, wings, tail, engines. I start getting a general idea how the debris is scattered. For example, if I have an airplane, how many of you had physics? How many of you know what physics is? Okay. If I have an airplane that crashes at a high speed, at a shallow angle on a hard surface, what's my ground scar going to look like? Long and thin, long and shallow. I get the general idea of how the airplane hit the ground by what it does after it hits the ground. That's the importance of that. Impact angle and dynamics. Now we start getting into some more impressive physics. And how many folks have had trigonometry? Okay. Okay, you're going to use it if you get into this business because a lot of stuff we do. I hated math when I was in college. I had a calculus class, got a C in it. But now I'm using math. Damn. Anyway, got to remember I'm a sailor. Anyway. So, you got to use math to find out some of this stuff. And you got to collect specific information. In-flight breakup, best sign, stuff isn't all in the same place. When we get up to the crash lab, I'll show you a couple of examples of that. In-flight fire. Now I'll start with in-flight fires are fairly rare. But when they do happen, they probably have something to do with causing a crash. Problem, airplane hits the ground, fuel tanks rupture, fuel finds an ignition source, what have I got on the ground? Ground fire. What does ground fire do to my in-flight evidence? Destroys it. So we've got to be careful with that. One important thing is how do I get the stuff out of there? I got a busted airplane that's in the middle of the field. How do I get it out? Well, this is after my investigation is done. How do I get it out of there and get it to a storage facility? What kinds of things do I need? Do I need a crane? A few years ago, I investigated one of our airplanes. A guy flew a brand new Cessna 172 into the side of a mountain, Mohawk Peak, about 40 miles west of here. Just to get to it, we had to take it. I had not done a helicopter insertion in about 20 years. It's fun. And then I had to walk a mile across country through some really rigorous territory to get where the airplane was. How do you think we got that airplane out of there?
Airlift?
With what?
Another
Helicopter. Yep, salvage guys got a Huey helicopter, flew it up, dropped a couple of people. They had that airplane out of there in 2 hours. That's how they got it out. Do you think that's going to damage the wreckage? Sure it is. And you're going to see things like cut marks and various other things. If the fire department has been there Getting survivors out of an airplane. Number one, don't ever interfere with them. What? Anybody want to be a firefighter in here? Oh, firefighters? Okay, we got a few popping up over here. Most of the tools firefighters have, other than the agent-based things, are designed all to do one thing. What is it? Tear stuff up and expose it and open it up. That induces damage. That's a real important side of this you got to be careful with, is what did the salvage folks do to the wreckage, particularly if you didn't get to the scene of the accident in time to investigate it. Next slide. Preservation of evidence. When we're doing a field investigation, which you will be doing next week, preservation of evidence is a big chunk of what we do in the field investigation. Now, there's several ways we go about it. Aerial photographs, which you will not be doing here, but if you can, get an aerial photograph of the site. Gives you a third dimension. You can see how stuff's laid out. One thing to remember, if you're using a helicopter to do the aerial photograph, do not overfly the wreckage scene. And we've seen people do this. Anybody know why? If the helicopter is sucking air through that rotor, producing lift, what's coming out the bottom of the rotor plane? Rotor wash. Which is doing what once it hits the ground? It's moving stuff around and causing flying missiles. And you really get people upset with you if they start getting hit by pieces of the wreckage, plus you completely moved everything around and destroyed your accidents. So if you're going to use a helicopter, you fly offset from it. Don't let the rotor hit you. Okay. Some of the other things we might want to do, photograph everything. In today's world of digital photography, how many of you have ever seen a film canister?
Right here.
Okay, there's going to come a time when I'm going to ask that question, and I'm going to get the reverse question, what's a film canister? We don't use film anymore. We use digital photography. And I've got a couple of different cameras that I can take the best pictures in the world, and with a 16 gig SD card, I can take over 1,000 higher quality pictures than anything I could have ever taken with film. So photograph everything before you move anything. Okay. Protect physical evidence from damage. And hopefully the salvage folks have the equipment to do some of this. Bubble wrap and duct tape. Okay, know the old rule? You can fix anything with duct tape, a pair of pliers, and a hammer. Okay? Anyway. And a lot of times, if I've got a fracture surface, for example, that I need to take back into the laboratory and examine the edges of that fracture surface to tell whether it happened all at once or do I have a progressive process like fatigue or corrosion going, I need to protect it. Because all it takes is somebody dropping it or banging something into it, destroying my evidence. Got to protect that stuff. Take samples from the airplane. Medical examiner does the samples from the people. We take samples from the aircraft. Consumables like fuel, oil, hydraulic fluids. Be careful, some of them are caustic, some of them dangerous. Photograph ground scars, trees, everything in the surrounding area. Okay. Detailed on-site inventory. Find all the parts of the airframe and the extremities, wingtips, landing gear, antennae. Those are all extremities. A lot of times the airplane, as it's descending, hits something. If I take off a wingtip, it's up in the tree, and the airplane's over there, does that tell me something about the final flight path of that airplane? So it becomes important to find all the extremities. Flaps and slats, control surfaces. Everybody know what those things mean?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Fuselage, wings, cockpit, anything else important? Propulsion. Now one thing here, how many want to be pilots again? You see the hands. Okay. You lose an engine in flight. Do you have to crash? No, you do not. If you manage the emergency, even in helicopters. Now I'm not a rotor head, I've got some time doing search and rescue, but I don't really like helicopters, but even a helicopter. You lose the engine, what can you still do with that helicopter?
Glide.
Safely leave it.
Auto rotate. But, point is, I can get it down on the surface without too much damage. Fixed wing airplanes, all have a glide ratio. Cessna 1, how many of you flown a Cessna 172 have been out? Okay, you know what the glide ratio is? Okay, anybody?
What?
How far can that thing glide? 9 to 1 on most of them. You got, for every vertical 1,000 feet, you can glide 9,000. Think about that. Anyway, propulsion doesn't cause accidents. Propulsion by itself doesn't cause the airplane to crash. It's got to come together with something else. Either in the process of tearing itself apart, the power plant breaks something else that is vital, or, far more commonly, what's the first rule? Fly the airplane. Fly the airplane, good. Even with the engine stopped, yeah, that airplane is still capable of number 94. What's your name?
Cody.
Cody,
Yes, sir.
okay. Gold star. That airplane's still capable of flying.
Yes, sir.
And you can glide a fair distance
Yes.
as long as you maintain control and manage the emergency. Find a place to put it. Try to restart if you got the altitude.
Like water.
Yeah. Oh, don't go near water.
What is?
Do not put the airplane in the water if you can avoid it.
Well, if there's ground, like rock or water, you're going
If
for
I
water.
gotta choose, and I've got boulders and water, I'll probably go in the water.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
But if I've got nice flat ground, I'm gonna
Like
put
the
it on the
miracle
ground.
on the Hudson.
He landed in a river,
That was just
not in the
water.
ocean.
No, I meant water. Just,
Point is,
yes.
engines, propellers. Everybody know what a propeller is? What is it? It's an air, who said airfoil? Gold star. It's an airfoil, it's just turned sideways. It does all the same things any other airfoil does. And sometimes when it deforms itself, it's designed to do it in air, and it screws itself into a denser medium like dirt. Sometimes you get bending. It's amazing sometimes. And you'll see this when we go up to the lab next week. How much bending you can get in something as durable and heavy as a propeller. And it tells us a lot about propulsion, the state of the system. Accessories, depending on the sophistication of the airplane, and control systems. I got to account for all that stuff, propulsion. Okay. Breakage patterns. Now this is back to stuff we probably figured out in the beginning when we first did our initial site survey. If I have a steep impact angle with a relatively nose-down attitude, most of the time I'm going to have a small, relatively circular breakage pattern. In a lot of cases, that airplane may actually crater. It'll dig a hole in the ground. And when it does, parts of it may bounce back out. What does that tell me about control versus no control? It's probably not under control, unless it's a suicide. That's a possibility. But most of the time, it's a departure from control flow. Spins. How many of you have heard of spins?
Yes.
Anybody ever do one?
No.
Denny, you need to take them up in an airplane and spin them.
It's illegal now.
Okay. Spins are fun. I shouldn't say that, but if you are in control of the aircraft and it is certificated to accomplish that particular maneuver, spins are kind of fun.
They did top
If you have an inadvertent spin, it's like the world went upside down, and you don't know which way is up. Now, if I've got a pilot that has never been taught spins, and manages to get the airplane into a spin, how's that airplane going to hit the ground?
spinning.
Nose down, wing down. Very distinctive impact. You always got one wing asking permission and one wing inertially bent backward. The low wing is going to be the one that digs in and fails rearward. The high wing is the one that inertially, everybody know what inertia is? Okay. Inertially fails and projects forward. So you've always got that asymmetry in a normal spin. Anybody know what flat spin is?
Yes. Learned it from Top Gun.
Well, yeah, okay. That's an example. Flat spin, the aircraft is rotating around its own center of gravity. Your velocity vector is straight down. Do you think a flat spin is going to look different from a normal spin?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I've got two flat spins up the crash lab. Ray, is the Caravan one of their... Is the Caravan one of the ones we're gonna work next week?
No, it's not.
I'm gonna try to get us out of here about 10 minutes early and take you up to the crash lab and show you a flat spin. Anybody okay with, everybody okay with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Flat spins look like somebody stepped on the airplane. All of the collapse is vertical. The airplane we're gonna look at killed 9 people. The problem with most flat spins, unless you're lucky enough to have a drag chute, which Colonel Peoples knows what those things are for, most civilian airplanes don't have them. What can't you do? Once it's in the flat spin, you can't get out of it. And that's what happened to these folks. So, flat spin's very distinctive. Okay. Low-level flight, shallow impact angles. Some degree of control. We even have a nice little 4-letter acronym if we put it on land. We call them CFIT, or Controlled Flight in the Terrain. Now that's what happened. How it happened and why it happened, that's what we do the investigation to figure out. I'll make this statement right now. Humans were not designed to fly. I mean that. We figured out a way to do it anyway. But if you look at how our semicircular canals are configured, how many of you know what semicircular canals are? There you go, balance, essentially triaxial accelerometers in your inner ear. If I was going to design a creature to operate 3-dimensionally, how would I want the axes of those 3 semicircular canals oriented? 90 degrees to each other. If you take a look at our 2 vertical semicircular canals, they're only about 65 to 70%. We're not designed to fly. We figured out a way to do it, which means we're very susceptible to things like illusion. Visual illusions, vestibular illusions. It's amazing what you can do to somebody in an airplane by doing nothing more than putting a blindfold on, put the airplane in a 30-degree right turn,